just hit the reset button on life. Trying to make this as short as possible. I just realized that ministry I'm trying to think how to word this, but basically ministry from it being my job. I'm getting paid from this. My life is going to be based on the fickleness of people, whether a church is doing well, not doing well. And, financial times had hit, and we'd been a church that always had a very large budget, a budget much larger than what it should have been for the amount of people that we had. But we had a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of givers. And so, the economy tightens up. The first thing people quit doing is giving. They quit tithing, and the offerings become slack. And back then we had something called first fruits, and that dries up. All this stuff dries up or begins to dry up, and then we start having to drop off all the things that I loved. That was my job. And long story short, the budget got to a point due to the economy being so bad that, I'm about one of the only staff members left, and I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs saying, okay, what is there to do? And idle time's the devil's workshop. And I'm sitting there really getting ticked off with God, because we had all, God, you're supposed to take care of us. You're supposed to, we should be continually growing. The budget should be getting bigger, not smaller. You're bigger than the economy. And we put all this off on him. And so, man, I got pissed off. And due to that, just really began to look for gratification where it used to come from ministry into ministry. And probably even back then too much. It should have came from Jesus. It should have came from family and all. But just, I was addicted to the high and the mechanism of doing big ministry and really doing it bigger than most people in our region and in our arena. And most people that was along for what I call the boom days would still to this day probably agree that we had something very special, something very unique. But, when you're sitting there and you get ticked off with God because everything you love to do and everything you put your life, you grew up building this ministry with your parents and your family, and it seems like it's all going to hell in a handbasket. Never had leadership issues, never had, the elders were always like family, it was unified. Everybody was for each other. There was never no problems. Well, when money starts tightening up, most of the elders are entrepreneurs. You start messing with people's money, you start finding out what they really like. Right. And so that's where I learned not to judge people off of you want to call somebody your friend, you want to say somebody's for you, you want to call them your armor bearer, the hard times is what proves whether they were or not. The easy road, it don't matter. If you want to find out if a truck's got some loose bolts in it, you're not going to find out on the highway. You got to take that sucker down a rough dirt road. And we went down that dirt road, and I realized, listen, a lot of these people that stood up and said, only way I'm leaving you, Pastor Dale, is in a pine box. Yeah. Well, you was full of crap, because it didn't take very much at all when times got tough for you to have a whole different vision. And when you take that personal, because you grow up as a pastor's kid watching your parents go through all this BS, all the people that they stayed up with and counseled and helped and took the call at 3 a.m, especially, and held their grandma's hand that didn't even attend church, when they was sick and in the bed, and when church was in the younger years and all this stuff. And then when people get mad over the slightest little thing, they don't shoot you a bird, say F you or nothing. They just walk out, booing or by. They gone. And so when you watch that over, you can process that good for a number of years, especially on a congregational level with the parishioners. But then when your leadership starts doing that to you, right. And then I start sitting back and saying, man, I was disillusioned. And I was disillusioned because I had an illusion. We was living an illusion of what church we thought was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And we had a very special thing. We had our own little ecosystem. It was great. We touched a lot of people. I don't think it was all for naught. There's a lot of good come out of it. And there's some stuff that's still standing due to it. And I think a lot of people that took the helm of a lot of that have forgotten that, because there's no honor there. But maybe that'll come one day, maybe it won't. But at this point, I'll eat good either way. So I could.